The fluorescent lights of the NSA's Fort Meade facility hummed with their eternal, sterile buzz. Row upon row of monitors cast pale blue shadows across the faces of night shift analysts, their eyes tracking streams of data that most of the world would never know existed. In the back corner of Sector 7, Captain Sarah Brennan sat motionless, her gaze locked on a waveform that shouldn't exist. 3:47 a.m., the witching hour for secrets. Sarah's fingers hovered over her keyboard, trembling slightly. Not from fatigue, though she'd been awake for 19 hours straight. Not from the cold that permeated the underground complex. She trembled because she was staring at a ghost, a digital phantom she'd last seen 15 years ago, on the worst night of her life. The signal had appeared for exactly 0.3 seconds. A whisper in the electromagnetic spectrum. Most analysts would have missed it entirely, dismissed it as atmospheric interference or equipment glitch. But Sarah Brennan wasn't most analysts. At 29, she was the youngest captain in the cryptanalysis division, and she hadn't earned that distinction by overlooking anomalies. She isolated the waveform, her practiced hands dancing across dual keyboards. The signal had emerged from the secure communications channel of SEAL Team 7, currently operating in the Syrian theater. Frequency, 4.625 megahertz. Encryption, AES 256, military grade. But there was something else, something hidden in the pattern of the carrier wave itself. Sarah pulled up her custom spectrum analysis software, a program she'd written herself during her second year at West Point, refined over 7 years at the National Security Agency. The algorithm stripped away layers of encryption like peeling an onion, exposing the mathematical signature underneath. Her breath caught. The signature matched, 99.7% correlation. She knew this encryption pattern, knew it the way a daughter knows her father's handwriting, had studied it obsessively for years, searching for answers that never came. This was the exact cryptographic fingerprint that had appeared in the communications logs from Operation Midnight Sun. September 23, 2010, Afghanistan, Helmand Province. Sarah closed her eyes, but the memories came anyway, sharp and unbidden. She'd been 14 years old, sitting in her mother's kitchen in suburban Virginia, watching her mom's hands shake as she held the phone, watching the color drain from her face, watching her world end in real time. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Brennan killed in action, along with 6 other men, an ambush that military intelligence claimed was pure bad luck, wrong place, wrong time. Taliban fighters who just happened to be in position. A tragic coincidence in an ugly war. Except Sarah's father hadn't believed in coincidences. He'd taught her that, taught her to look for patterns, to trust mathematics over intuition, to never accept easy answers to hard questions. And now, 15 years later, his ghost was speaking to her through the static. Sarah's hands moved with sudden urgency. She pulled up the historical database, her security clearance granting access to files that existed in digital vaults 3 levels below where she sat. Operation Midnight Sun had been classified, the details sealed. But the raw signals intelligence, the intercepted transmissions, the frequency logs, the cryptographic metadata, those lived in her domain. She ran a cross-correlation analysis. The software churned through 15 years of archived signals, searching for matches, searching for the pattern. 3 minutes, that's all it took. 12 hits. 12 separate incidents spanning from 2010 to the present day. Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Libya, Somalia. Different theaters, different units, different years, but the same signature. The same impossible, ghost-like transmission appearing in secure military communications channels. And then, silence. As if whoever, or whatever, was sending these signals knew exactly when to hide. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. This wasn't random. This was systematic, deliberate. Someone with access to the most secure communication systems in the United States military was inserting phantom signals into operational channels. And based on the timestamps, these signals appeared hours before catastrophic intelligence failures, before ambushes, before men died. Her father's voice echoed in her memory from one of their last conversations before his final deployment. He called her from Bagram Air Base, static crackling on the line. "The comms feel wrong, Sarah Bear. Can't explain it. Just dirty. Like someone's in the room who shouldn't be there." She'd been too young to understand then. Now she understood perfectly. Sarah began documenting everything: screenshots, data files, correlation matrices. She worked with the methodical precision that had made her one of NSA's top cryptanalysts. Every piece of evidence carefully cataloged, every analysis triple-checked. By 4:15 a.m., she had assembled a preliminary report that would require immediate escalation. This wasn't just an anomaly. This was evidence of a mole, someone inside the intelligence apparatus who had been operating undetected for 15 years. She reached for the secure phone to contact her supervisor, then hesitated. Protocol dictated she report through her chain of command. But something, instinct, caution, her father's voice warning about dirty comms, made her pause. Sarah pulled up the access logs for Operation Midnight Sun. Historia records showed exactly 5 individuals had possessed the encryption keys necessary to generate that specific cryptographic signature. 5 people who could have inserted that ghost signal into her father's communications 15 years ago. She scrolled through the names. 3 were dead, casualties of various conflicts, all within 18 months of Midnight Sun. Convenient. Too convenient. The 4th name made her stomach tighten. Major Eric Blackwood, her current supervisor, the man whose desk sat 40 feet from her workstation. Sarah's eyes moved to the final name on the list, and she felt ice water replace the blood in her veins. Colonel Marcus Vance, retired now, living in Alexandria. The officer who had personally delivered her father's death notification. The man who'd looked her teenage self in the eyes and promised that her father had died a hero's death, that his sacrifice hadn't been in vain. She sat back in her chair, mind spinning. If Blackwood was compromised, reporting through normal channels would be suicide. The mole would know instantly. Evidence would disappear. People, potentially including Sarah herself, might have accidents. But she couldn't sit on this. Couldn't let her father's death remain unavenged. Couldn't let whoever was selling American soldiers' lives continue operating. There was one person she could trust, one person who'd been there, who'd survived when her father hadn't. Colonel James Rutherford. Sarah checked the time. 4:27 a.m. Rutherford would be awake. Old soldiers never slept well, and Rutherford was as old school as they came. 67 years old, retired from active duty, but still sharp as broken glass. He'd commanded the Special Operations Task Force that included her father, had been the only officer to survive Operation Midnight Sun, taking shrapnel to the chest and leg that still set off metal detectors. More importantly, Rutherford had been her father's closest friend, had become something like a surrogate uncle to Sarah after the funeral, checking in on her and her mother, writing recommendation letters for West Point, attending her graduation. He'd taught her to shoot, to think tactically, to honor her father's memory by finishing what he'd started. If anyone would understand, would help her navigate this nightmare, it was Rutherford. Sarah pulled out her personal phone, not NSA issued, just a civilian device that lived in her locker during work hours. She had Rutherford's number memorized, had never called it from inside the facility before, but desperate times. She typed out a text message, carefully worded. No specifics, no classified information, just enough. Need to talk. About Dad's last deployment. Found something. Coffee at the usual place? She hit send, then forced herself to breathe, to think. If she was right, if someone had been selling intelligence for 15 years, then they were careful, professional, connected. The kind of person who didn't leave loose ends. The kind who made problems disappear. Sarah saved her analysis to an encrypted thumb drive, then created 3 copies. One went into her boot, one into the lining of her jacket. The third, she uploaded to a secure cloud server she'd set up years ago, protected by encryption so complex that even NSA's quantum computers would need months to crack it. Then she began erasing her tracks, cleared her browser history, her recent file access logs, her search queries, made it look like she'd spent the night running routine signals analysis. Nothing unusual. Just another graveyard shift in the eternal war against foreign signals intelligence. Her phone buzzed. Rutherford's response was characteristically terse. 0700, don't be late. Sarah glanced at the wall clock. 2.5 hours. She could make it through her shift, hand off to the morning crew, and be at the Arlington Cafe by 7. Just another normal day. Except nothing would be normal ever again. The cafe sat 3 blocks from Arlington National Cemetery, a deliberate choice. Rutherford always picked meeting places with symbolic weight. Sarah arrived at 6:53 a.m., parking her 10-year-old Honda Civic in a spot where she could watch the entrance. Old habits from her father, reinforced by Rutherford's teachings. Always know your exits. Always see who's coming. The morning was crisp, October chill carrying the scent of dying leaves. Sarah bought a black coffee, no sugar, no cream, the way soldiers drank it, and claimed a corner booth with clear sight lines to both doors. Rutherford entered at precisely 7 a.m. He moved with the careful gait of a man whose body remembered wars his mind tried to forget. Tall, ramrod straight despite the pain Sarah knew lived in his joints. Steel gray hair cropped military short. Eyes that missed nothing. He ordered his own coffee, then slid into the booth across from her. For a long moment, they just looked at each other. Sarah saw the question in his eyes, saw him trying to read what had brought her here at dawn, cryptic and urgent. "Rough night, Captain?" Rutherford said finally. His voice carried the gravel of too many cigarettes in too many combat zones, quit 20 years ago but leaving their permanent mark. "Roughest I've had in years." Clearly, he sipped his coffee, waiting, patient as stone. He taught her that too, the tactical value of silence. Sarah pulled out her phone, opened a photo she'd taken of her monitor. The waveform analysis, the correlation data. She slid the phone across the table. Rutherford's eyes narrowed as he studied the image. His jaw tightened. "Where did you find this?" "Last night. SEAL Team 7 communications out of Syria." The signal appeared for 0.3 seconds. Sarah kept her voice low, conversational. To anyone watching, they were just old friends catching up. Same cryptographic signature as Operation Midnight Sun. The color drained from Rutherford's face. He set down his coffee cup with exaggerated care, as if sudden movement might shatter something irreparable. "You're certain?" His voice was barely a whisper. 99.7% correlation. "And Colonel," Sarah leaned forward, her own voice dropping, "it's not just Midnight Sun. I found 11 other instances, 11 other operations that showed the same ghost signal. All of them preceded intelligence failures, ambushes, casualties." Rutherford closed his eyes. His hands, scarred from a lifetime of violence in service of peace, trembled slightly. "Jesus Christ, 15 years. You knew something was wrong, back then, didn't you?" He looked at her with eyes that had seen too much death. "Your father called me the night before, used our old secure line from Ranger School, said the comms felt compromised, said he was going to scrub the mission, recommend postponement." Sarah's breath caught. "I never knew that." "Of course not. The official report said he died during routine patrol, but it wasn't routine." Rutherford's voice hardened. He was investigating, had started asking questions about signal irregularities, unauthorized access to encryption protocols. And 12 hours later, his convoy got hit by a Taliban ambush that knew exactly where they'd be, exactly when. Someone sold him out. Not just him, 7 good men, fathers, sons, brothers, all because someone decided American lives were an acceptable price for whatever they were getting in return. Rutherford's fist clenched on the table. We investigated. I personally pushed for a full signals intelligence audit. Got stonewalled at every level. The report came back clean. Equipment malfunction. Bad luck. Move along. Except it wasn't bad luck. No, it was murder. He looked at the photo again, this time with the cold, analytical eye of a special operations planner. You said 11 other instances. Show me the pattern. Sarah pulled out a small notebook, handwritten, safer than digital. She documented each incident during her sleepless night. Afghanistan, 2010 through 2013, 3 operations. Iraq, 2014, 2 operations. Syria, 2017 through 2024, 4 operations. Libya, 2019, 1 operation. Somalia, 2023, 2 operations. Casualties? 43 confirmed KIA, unknown number wounded or captured. Rutherford's jaw worked silently. Sarah could see the calculation happening behind his eyes, the tactical assessment, the strategic implications. Someone's been selling intelligence for 15 years, he said finally. Someone with access to the most secure communications in our military. Someone protected enough that they've never been caught. Someone in my access logs for Midnight Sun, Sarah said quietly. That got his full attention. Who? 5 names had the encryption keys. 3 are dead, all within 18 months of Midnight Sun. Colonel Marcus Vance is retired in Alexandria, and Major Eric Blackwood is my current supervisor at Fort Meade. Blackwood. Rutherford tested the name. Don't know him. What's his background? 15 years NSA, cryptography and signals intelligence, high-level clearance, access to everything. Sarah paused. He was the one who ordered me to classify last night's incident as equipment malfunction. Told me to delete my report and move on. Before or after you ran the correlation analysis? Before. I hadn't even started deep analysis yet, just flagged the anomaly. Rutherford's eyes narrowed. So he shut you down immediately, didn't want you digging. That's what I thought. Could be innocent, could be standard security protocol, minimize chatter about active operations. Could be, Sarah agreed, but my gut says otherwise. Your gut inherited good instincts. Rutherford drained his coffee, thinking, what about Vance? He delivered my father's death notification, told us it was an honorable death, that Dad died doing his duty, attended the funeral, sent a wreath every year on the anniversary until he retired. Could be guilt, could be covering tracks. Rutherford drummed his fingers on the table, an old habit when he was planning operations. You can't report this through normal channels. If Blackwood's involved, he'll bury it. If he's not involved but someone above him is, same result. I know. You're also violating about 15 different NSA protocols by talking to me, discussing classified signals intelligence with an unauthorized civilian. They could court-martial you. I know that too. Rutherford smiled, thin and hard. Michael would have done the same thing. Stubborn runs in the Brennan family. I learned from the best. Sarah met his eyes. I need help, Colonel. I can't do this alone. I don't know who to trust. And if I'm wrong, if I pursue this and it turns out to be nothing, my career is over. And if you're right and you don't pursue it, more soldiers die. Yes. Rutherford was quiet for a long moment, staring past her toward the cemetery visible through the cafe window. Sarah knew what he was thinking, knew he could see the headstones, row upon row, could see her father's grave, section 60, where they'd stood together in the rain 15 years ago. Your father told me something the last time we spoke, Rutherford said finally. Said that if anything happened to him, if the mission went bad, I should watch over you. Make sure you grew up strong and smart and capable of finishing what he started. He looked back at her. I thought he meant your education, your career. Didn't realize he was leaving you a war to fight. Will you help me? Sarah, I'm 67 years old. I've got shrapnel in my chest that aches when it rains, a knee that sounds like Rice Krispies, and the Pentagon revoked my security clearance when I retired. What exactly do you think I can do? You know people. You know how these things work. You know the tradecraft. Sarah's voice intensified. And you know what it's like to survive when your brothers died. To live with that. I need someone who understands. Rutherford studied her face, saw the determination there, the iron will that reminded him so much of Michael Brennan. It hurt. Saw, too, that she wasn't asking permission. She was doing this regardless. The only question was whether she'd do it alone. What's your plan? He asked. Find whoever's selling the intelligence. Prove they were responsible for Operation Midnight Sun. Make sure they face justice. Simple, direct, impossible. That's not a plan. That's a suicide mission disguised as revenge. Then help me make it better. Rutherford sighed, the sound of a man accepting an inevitable burden. You'll need evidence, real evidence, not just signal correlations. Financial records, communications logs, physical proof of contact with foreign assets. The kind of evidence that survives defense attorneys and intelligence community review boards. How do I get that? Carefully, methodically, and probably illegally. He pulled out his own phone, thumbed through contacts. I know a guy at FBI counterintelligence, retired now, but still connected. He might be able to run some quiet inquiries, see if there's any open investigations into DoD intelligence leaks. Will he talk to you? He owes me his life from Mogadishu in '93. He'll talk. Rutherford's fingers paused over the screen. But Sarah, once we start this, there's no going back. You're making powerful enemies, people who've gotten away with murder for 15 years. They won't just roll over. I know. They'll come after you, professionally, personally, maybe physically. You need to accept that risk. Sarah thought of her father's grave, thought of 43 names on casualty reports, thought of the ghost signal that had appeared last night and the 30 SEAL team members in Syria who might be walking into an ambush in the next 72 hours. I accept it, she said. Rutherford nodded slowly. He made the call, speaking in careful circumlocutions that told Sarah he was using tradecraft even on a presumably secure line. When he hung up, his expression was grim. My contact will reach out through back channels. Might take 24 hours. Meanwhile, you need to act normal at work. Don't let Blackwood suspect anything's wrong. And in the meantime? In the meantime, you start building your case, quietly, carefully. Rutherford leaned forward. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to access the archived communications logs for all 12 operations. Not through normal channels, that'll leave traces. You're going to use every black hat trick you know to get in without leaving footprints. That's highly illegal. I know. But here's the thing about fighting in the shadows, Sarah. Sometimes you have to become what you're fighting against. Your father understood that. He bent rules when necessary, just never broke the ones that mattered. What are the ones that matter? Don't betray your country. Don't abandon your brothers. Don't let the guilty walk free. Rutherford's voice was steel. Everything else is negotiable. Sarah absorbed that, felt something shift inside her, the final transition from analyst to operator, from observer to participant. Okay, I'll get the logs. And look for patterns beyond the ghost signals. Financial irregularities, personnel movements, anything that connects these 12 operations beyond the cryptographic signature. There's always a pattern, always. What will you do? I'm going to dig into Marcus Vance, see what our dear retired colonel has been up to since leaving active duty, where he's getting his money, who his friends are. Rutherford stood, dropped cash on the table for both their coffees. We'll meet again in 48 hours, same place, same time. By then, we should both have pieces of the puzzle. Sarah stood as well, On impulse, she reached out and gripped his hand. His fingers were rough, calloused from decades of violence. They closed around hers with surprising gentleness. "Thank you," she said. "Don't thank me yet. We're about to walk through fire, Sarah. Might not make it out the other side. But we walked together." Rutherford's weathered face softened slightly. "Your father said that, word for word. Last conversation we ever had." "I know. He wrote it in a letter. Mom gave it to me when I graduated West Point." Sarah felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. "He said some fights are worth the risk. Some truths need to be told, no matter the cost." He was right. Didn't make it any easier when the coffin came home. Rutherford squeezed her hand once, then released it. "Go, do your work. Be careful. Trust no one except me, and even then verify everything I tell you. Good tradecraft. The only tradecraft that keeps you alive." They parted in the parking lot, Rutherford to his battered Ford pickup, Sarah to her Honda. She watched him drive away, then sat in her car for a long moment, engine running, heat blasting away the October chill. Her phone buzzed. A text from work. Routine status update request from Blackwood. Perfectly normal. Perfectly timed to remind her that normal still existed, that she still had to maintain the facade. She typed a response. "All systems operational, quiet night. Nothing unusual to report." The lie came easily, too easily. Sarah pulled onto the road, heading back toward Fort Meade. Through the rearview mirror, she caught a glimpse of Arlington Cemetery. Section 60, her father's grave somewhere among the endless rows of white stone. "Not yet," she thought. "I'm not ready to face you yet. Not until I have answers." The real memorial would come later, when the guilty faced justice. She drove back to Fort Meade, badged through security, descended into the subterranean complex where America's secrets lived and died in streams of encrypted data. Her workstation waited, monitors dark, keyboard cold. Sarah logged in, pulled up routine analysis tasks, became to all external appearances just another analyst grinding through another shift. But beneath the surface, in the hidden spaces between keystrokes and mouse clicks, she began her real work, began mapping the architecture of betrayal, began hunting a ghost that had haunted American military communications for 15 years. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced precision. She needed access to archived operational logs without leaving traces, needed to penetrate security protocols she'd helped design, needed to become, as Rutherford said, what she was fighting against. Sarah opened a command terminal, black screen with green text, started typing code that would tunnel through firewalls, spoof access credentials, create false audit trails. Every technique was illegal. Every line of code was career-ending if discovered. She hesitated for just a moment, fingers poised over the enter key. Then she thought of her father's voice on that static-filled call from Bagram, thought of 43 names on casualty reports, thought of 30 SEALs in Syria walking unknowing into potential ambush. She hit enter. The infiltration began. Hours passed in concentrated silence. Sarah barely breathed as she navigated through layers of security, each barrier requiring a different exploit, a different approach. This was her domain: cryptography, signals intelligence, the mathematics of secrets. She was one of NSA's best for a reason. By noon, she had access to the archived communications logs for Operation Midnight Sun. The raw data that had been classified, sealed, buried for 15 years. Sarah began her analysis, pulling the ghost signal apart byte by byte, looking for the signature of its creator. Someone had inserted this phantom transmission into secure military communications. Someone with deep system access and sophisticated technical knowledge. The encryption was elegant, beautiful even. Whoever created it understood mathematics at a profound level. The backdoor was hidden in the implementation of the AES algorithm itself. A vulnerability so subtle that automated security scans would never detect it. But Sarah wasn't automated security. She was a crypt analyst who'd spent 7 years studying every variation, every weakness, every creative exploit of modern encryption systems. She found the fingerprint. Every cryptographic implementation carried unique characteristics, tiny variations in how the mathematics were executed, quirks of the programmer's style, like handwriting in code form. Sarah ran the fingerprint through NSA's database of known cryptographic implementations. The search took 17 minutes. When the results populated, her blood ran cold. The encryption scheme matched internal NSA training materials, specifically materials from a classified course taught between 2007 and 2012. Course designation: Advanced Cryptographic Warfare. Only 47 people had ever taken that course. Sarah pulled the roster. Major Eric Blackwood, position 12 on the list. Colonel Marcus Vance, position 31, and 3 other names. Sarah cross-referenced them with the Operation Midnight Sun access logs. All 3 were among the 5 people who'd possessed the necessary encryption keys. All 3 were now dead, killed in separate incidents. Helicopter crash in Afghanistan, 2011. Training accident at Fort Bragg, 2012. Heart attack in 2013, except the autopsy showed traces of potassium chloride, the universal poison of intelligence agencies. Sarah sat back in her chair, mind racing. This wasn't just one traitor. This was a conspiracy, a systematic elimination of everyone who might have known, might have suspected, might have talked. Except Blackwood and Vance had survived. Coincidence? Sarah didn't believe in coincidences. Her phone buzzed, an internal message. Blackwood wanted to see her. Right now. His office. Sarah's heart hammered. She closed all her hidden programs, wiped her tracks, returned her screen to innocuous data analysis, stood on legs that felt like water, walked 40 feet to her supervisor's office, each step an exercise in controlled fear. Blackwood looked up as she entered. Mid-40s, prematurely gray, eyes that revealed nothing. He'd been career NSA, respected and decorated. But Sarah looked at him now through different eyes, saw not a mentor, but a potential murderer. "Close the door, Captain," he said. Sarah complied, pulse thundering in her ears. "I wanted to follow up on last night's incident," Blackwood continued. "The signal anomaly you flagged. Just want to make sure we're on the same page about the classification." "Yes, sir. Equipment malfunction. I filed it accordingly." "Good." He studied her face. "You look tired. Long shift?" "Yes, sir." "Go home. Get some rest. You're no good to us exhausted." His tone was paternal, concerned. The perfect supervisor. "That's an order, Captain." Sarah nodded. "Thank you, sir." She turned to leave. Blackwood's voice stopped her at the door. "Captain Brennan?" She looked back. "Your father was a good man, a good soldier. I never had the privilege of meeting him, but his reputation was stellar." Blackwood's expression was unreadable. "He'd be proud of you. The work you do here, the service you render. Just remember, sometimes the best service is knowing when to let things go, when to trust the system." Sarah felt ice crystallize in her veins. That wasn't advice. That was a warning. "Yes, sir," she managed. "I understand perfectly." She walked out of his office on autopilot, gathered her things from her workstation, badged out through security, made it to her car before her hands started shaking. Blackwood knew, or suspected. Either way, the game had changed. Sarah pulled out her phone, sent a coded text to Rutherford. Single word: burned. His response came 30 seconds later. "Abort, go dark, will contact." Sarah started her car, pulled out of Fort Meade's parking lot, checked her mirrors obsessively. No tails that she could detect, but that meant nothing. NSA had surveillance capabilities that made tails unnecessary. She drove aimlessly for an hour, making random turns, doubling back, using every counter-surveillance technique Rutherford had taught her. Finally satisfied she was alone, She headed home to her apartment in Silver Spring. Home had never felt less safe. Sarah entered her apartment, immediately noting details out of place. Nothing obvious, just tiny things. A book on her shelf tilted differently. Kitchen cabinet not quite closed. Bathroom door at a different angle. Someone had been here. Professionals. Looking for something. Sarah's blood turned to ice. She pulled her service weapon from its lockbox, chambered around, cleared each room methodically. Empty. Whoever had come was long gone. But they'd sent a message. We know where you live. We can reach you anytime. Sarah holstered her weapon, mind spinning through options. She couldn't stay here, couldn't go back to work, couldn't trust anyone except Rutherford, and he'd told her to go dark. She packed a bag, essentials only, grabbed the thumb drives with her evidence, left her NSA-issued phone and laptop. They were tracking devices now, nothing more. 3 hours later, Sarah Brennan checked into a cheap motel in rural Maryland under a false name, paying cash. She sat on a bed that smelled of industrial cleaner and old cigarettes, staring at her personal phone, waiting for Rutherford's contact. Outside, dusk fell across America. Somewhere in Syria, 30 SEALs prepared for an operation that might be compromised. Somewhere in the Pentagon or Langley or Fort Meade, a traitor slept peacefully, 15 years of blood money keeping them warm. And in a forgettable motel room, a 29-year-old cryptanalyst made a decision that would either bring justice or end her life. She opened her laptop, began writing everything down, every piece of evidence, every connection, every suspicion. If something happened to her, if she disappeared into the machinery of government secrets, someone needed to know the truth. Sarah worked through the night, documenting her father's ghost, building a case from shadows and mathematics, preparing for a war she'd inherited at 14 and finally accepted at 29. Dawn came eventually, pale and uncertain. Sarah's phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Sunrise Diner, Route 40, 1 hour, come alone, bring everything. No signature. But she recognized Rutherford's phrasing, his tradecraft. Sarah gathered her evidence, her weapon, her courage, stepped out into morning light that felt different somehow, sharper, more real. The game was on. The war had begun. And Captain Sarah Brennan was done running from ghosts. The Sunrise Diner squatted beside Route 40 like a relic from another America. Chrome and red vinyl, the kind of place where truckers ate breakfast and asked no questions. Sarah arrived 20 minutes early, parked where she could watch the entrance, hand resting near her concealed Glock. Rutherford's pickup pulled in at exactly the appointed hour. He moved carefully, eyes scanning the lot with the automatic threat assessment of a man who'd survived too many ambushes to trust peaceful mornings. He slid into the booth across from her, face carved with new lines of worry. Rough night, he said, studying the dark circles under her eyes. Rougher than most. Sarah's voice was steady despite the exhaustion. But I found something. He ordered coffee from a waitress who'd seen too many miles to care about their conversation. Tell me what happened. Sarah laid it out, the cryptographic fingerprint, the advanced cryptographic warfare course roster, the 3 dead officers, Blackwood's warning disguised as fatherly concern, the search department. Rutherford listened without interruption, his face growing darker with each detail. When she finished, he sat silent for a long moment, stirring coffee he wouldn't drink. You're blown, he said finally. They know you're investigating. Question is whether they know how much you found. Blackwood's message was clear. Back off or disappear. Except you can't back off. Not now. Rutherford pulled a manila envelope from his jacket. My FBI contact came through. There's no official investigation into DoD intelligence leaks. Nothing on the books. But he did some quiet digging. Found something interesting. He slid 3 photographs across the table. Sarah studied them. A sleek office building in Northern Virginia. A corporate logo, Nightfall Solutions. Private military contractor, Rutherford explained, technically provides security consulting to DoD. In reality, they're a gray area operator. Regime change, intelligence gathering, deniable operations. The kind of outfit that does what the government can't officially touch. And Nightfall's been the primary contractor for security on every single operation that got compromised. All 12 of them. Rutherford tapped the photo. They provided SIGINT support, communications infrastructure, sometimes even personnel. They were inside the wire for Operation Midnight Sun. Sarah felt pieces clicking into place. They had access to our communications systems. Direct access, legitimate access, which means they could insert ghost signals and no one would question it. Just another contractor doing contractor things. How much are they worth? Current valuation is $2.3 billion. They've tripled in value over the past 15 years. Rutherford's voice was bitter. Every time an operation goes sideways, Congress approves more security funding, more contracts, more money flowing to companies like Nightfall. Create the problem, sell the solution. Oldest game in the book. But here's the kicker. Guess who's listed as a strategic consultant on Nightfall's board of advisors? Sarah already knew. Colonel Marcus Vance. Joined 6 months after retiring from active duty. Consulting fee of $300,000 a year, plus stock options that are now worth north of $5 million. Rutherford pulled out another document. And there's a second consultant listed, started 3 years ago, former NSA division chief. Name's David Corman. I know Corman. He taught at the Advanced Cryptographic Warfare course. Position 7 on the roster. Retired from NSA in 2022. Now he's pulling down $500,000 a year from Nightfall. Rutherford leaned forward. Sarah, this isn't just one trader. This is a systematic operation. They recruit people with access, insert them into positions where they can feed intelligence to Nightfall, and Nightfall sells it to the highest bidder. Create operational failures, boost their value, cash out through legitimate-looking consulting contracts. Sarah's mind raced through the implications. Blackwood? Nothing official, but I'd bet my pension he's next in line for a consulting position when he retires. That's how they work. Promise a golden parachute. Make it look legal. By the time anyone notices the pattern, the money's been laundered through enough shell corporations that you can't prove anything. We need evidence, real evidence, not just circumstantial connections. Which is why you're going to infiltrate Nightfall's network. Rutherford said it calmly, like he was suggesting dinner plans. Sarah stared at him. That's insane. They're a professional intelligence contractor. Their security will be military grade. Good thing you're military grade yourself. He slid a thumb drive across the table. This contains everything my contact could gather on Nightfall's infrastructure. Server locations, network architecture, known vulnerabilities. You're the best cryptanalyst NSA has. Time to prove it. This is beyond illegal. This is espionage against a private American company. This is war, Rutherford corrected. They fired the first shot 15 years ago when they killed your father. You're just returning fire. Sarah picked up the thumb drive, felt its weight. A few ounces of plastic and silicon that represented a point of no return. How long do I have? Syria operation launches in 56 hours. If Cardinal, whoever's running this operation, gets the intelligence to their buyers, 30 SEALs walk into an ambush. Rutherford's eyes were hard. Your father's ghost isn't the only one at stake here. There are men with wives and children who deserve to come home. Sarah pocketed the drive. I'll need equipment, a clean workspace, and complete isolation. I have a place, hunting cabin in West Virginia. Off-grid, no digital footprint. You can work there. What about you? I'm going to pay a visit to our friend Marcus Vance. See if I can rattle his cage. Maybe get him to make a mistake. That's dangerous. Rutherford smiled without humor. I'm 67 years old with shrapnel in my chest. Everything's dangerous. At least this way I get to choose my battles. Don't underestimate them. Sarah, his voice softened. Your father and I made a pact a long time ago. If one of us fell, the other would look after his family. I failed him once. I'm not failing him again. They left the diner separately. Sarah followed Rutherford's directions to the cabin, 2 hours into mountains that had hidden moonshiners and fugitives for generations. The structure was small, weathered, perfect. No neighbors, no witnesses. She set up her workspace methodically, laptop connected to a satellite uplink, bouncing through 6 countries to mask her location. External hard drives, monitoring software, everything she needed to wage digital war. Sarah loaded Rutherford's intelligence package, studied Nightfall's network architecture. They were good, very good. Firewalls within firewalls, intrusion detection systems that would flag unauthorized access instantly, encryption protocols that would take NSA's quantum computers months to crack. But every system had weaknesses. Every programmer made assumptions. Sarah's gift was finding the spaces between intention and implementation, the gaps where mathematics met human error. She worked for 8 hours straight, probing, testing, mapping the network's defenses like a safecracker feeling for tumblers. Coffee went cold. Daylight faded. Sarah barely noticed. At 11:47 p.m., she found her entry point. Nightfall's network relied on a VPN system for remote contractors. The VPN had to balance security with usability. Contractors needed to access files from unstable locations, often with limited bandwidth. That meant the system made compromises, small ones, tiny authentication shortcuts to prevent constant lockouts. Sarah began building her exploit. Code flowed from her fingers, elegant and lethal. She crafted a fake contractor profile, complete with forged credentials that would pass automated verification. Created a digital legend, employment history, project assignments, security clearances. Made herself invisible by becoming exactly what the system expected to see. 3 hours later, she was inside. The feeling was intoxicating. Sarah navigated through Nightfall's file systems, careful not to trigger alarms. Personnel records, financial data, contract specifications, everything a private military empire accumulated in its rise to power. She deployed a sophisticated search algorithm looking for keywords. Cardinal, Syria, Operation Midnight Sun, payment records, offshore accounts. The search ran for 47 minutes. When results populated, Sarah's exhaustion evaporated. She'd found the client database. Nightfall maintained meticulous records of their intelligence sales. Had to. This was a business, and businesses tracked revenue. The database was encrypted, but Sarah had all night and skills that most cryptanalysts spent careers developing. She attacked the encryption like a surgeon, methodical, precise. By 4 a.m., she'd cracked the first layer. By 5:30, the second. The third layer fell at 6:12, just as dawn broke over the West Virginia mountains. Sarah opened the database and saw 15 years of treason laid bare. Cardinal wasn't a single buyer. It was a code designation for a network of buyers. Russian military intelligence, Chinese Ministry of State Security, Iranian Quds Force, even some NATO allies who wanted advanced knowledge of American operations for their own strategic purposes. Nightfall had sold intelligence to all of them, playing every side, maximizing profit, and the amounts were staggering. Operation Midnight Sun, $400,000. Various Iraq operations, between $200,000 and $600,000 each. The Syria operations, prices had increased, some reaching nearly $1 million per intelligence package. Total revenue over 15 years, $47 million. Sarah felt sick. Her father's life, 42 other soldiers, all reduced to line items in a profit and loss statement. She kept digging, found payment routing information. The money flowed through shell corporations in the Cayman Islands, Luxembourg, Singapore. But everything eventually traced back to specific bank accounts. Sarah pulled the account holder information, started cross-referencing names. Marcus Vance, 5.2 million over 15 years. David Corman, 3.8 million. The three dead officers from the Advanced Cryptographic Warfare course all had received payments before their deaths, totaling nearly 2 million combined. And there, buried in the data, was confirmation of her worst suspicion. Eric Blackwood, $2.1 million. Most recent deposit, 4 days ago, 600,000. Down payment for the Syria Operation Intelligence. Sarah sat back, mind reeling. She'd suspected, had feared, but seeing the proof, the actual financial transactions, made it real in a way that theory never could. Her supervisor, the man who'd mentored her career, who'd written her performance reviews and recommended her promotions, who'd looked her in the eye and told her to let it go. A traitor, a murderer, bought and paid for. But Sarah forced herself to keep digging. She needed everything, needed the complete picture. She found communications logs, encrypted messages between Nightfall executives and their sources. Sarah deployed decryption algorithms, cracking each message thread. The conversations were clinical, businesslike, requests for specific intelligence, confirmation of delivery, payment authorization. No emotion, no acknowledgement that they were discussing the planned deaths of American soldiers. One message thread caught her attention. Recent communications about the Syria operation. Sarah read through them, her blood running colder with each exchange. The messages confirmed. Nightfall had requested detailed intelligence on SEAL Team 7's operational plan. Route, timing, communications frequencies, rules of engagement, everything an enemy would need to prepare a perfect ambush. And the messages revealed one more crucial detail. The Syria intelligence was scheduled for delivery at a dead drop location in 48 hours. An abandoned CIA facility in the Appalachian Mountains. GPS coordinates included. Sarah screenshot everything, downloaded the entire database, encrypted her copies with algorithms she'd developed herself, ones that didn't exist in any NSA manual. She was building a case that could bring down an empire. But she needed more, needed physical proof, needed to catch them in the act. Her phone buzzed, a text from Rutherford. Vance is running, spooked, think he knows we're coming, heading to Alexandria's safe house. We'll keep watch. Sarah replied quickly, found everything, database, financial records, Syria dead drop planned for 48 hours, Appalachian facility, GPS attached. Rutherford's response took 5 minutes. When it came, Sarah's stomach dropped. Heading to intercept. Do not follow. Too dangerous. Stay at cabin. We'll contact after. Sarah stared at the message. Every instinct screamed that Rutherford was walking into a trap, that a 67-year-old retired colonel, no matter how skilled, couldn't handle this alone. She started typing a response, stopped, started again. Her phone rang. Rutherford's voice was tense. Sarah, listen carefully. I know what you're thinking. Don't. This is my fight. It's our fight. No, it's your father's fight, and I'm finishing it for him. You stay there. Keep digging. Build the case. That's your strength. Let me handle the field work. Colonel, that's an order, Captain. The line went dead. Sarah sat in the cabin's silence, torn between duty and instinct. Rutherford was right. Her skills lay in analysis, in cryptography, in building unassailable evidence. Going after him would just create 2 targets. But he was also walking into unknown danger, and he was the only person in the world she could trust. Sarah made her decision. She packed her laptop in drives, cleared the cabin of any trace she'd been there, loaded her Glock in spare magazines, programmed the Appalachian facility coordinates into her GPS. If Rutherford wanted to play the lone hero, fine, but he'd have backup whether he wanted it or not. The drive took 4 hours through mountain roads that twisted like secrets. Sarah pushed her Honda as hard as she dared, mind running through tactical scenarios. What she'd find at the facility, how to approach, what to do if shooting started. She wasn't a field operator, wasn't trained for combat, but she was her father's daughter, and she'd learned a few things from Rutherford over the years. The abandoned CIA facility appeared exactly as the satellite imagery had shown. A Cold War listening post, built when the Appalachians were America's early warning system against Soviet bombers that never came. 3 buildings, concrete and rust, swallowed by forest. Sarah parked a quarter-mile away, approached on foot, moving carefully through October woods. She could hear voices ahead, multiple people. She crept closer, using trees for cover. Her heart hammered so hard she was sure it would give her away. Through the skeletal branches she saw vehicles. Rutherford's pickup, a black SUV, a Mercedes sedan, and people. Sarah counted 4. Rutherford, hands zip-tied, kneeling on the ground. 2 men in tactical gear, contractors by their bearing, and a third figure standing over Rutherford, Marcus Vance. Sarah's hand moved to her weapon. She was 70 yards away. Difficult shot, but possible. Except she'd never fired at a human being, never crossed that line. Vance was talking. Sarah couldn't hear words, but she could read body language. Interrogation. Threats. Rutherford's face was defiant, blood running from his nose. One of the contractors raised a weapon, pressed it to Rutherford's head. Sarah's finger touched her trigger. Training took over. Breathing slowed, hands steadied, world narrowed to sight picture and target. Then everything changed. The second SUV. The passenger door opened. A woman stepped out. Sarah's breath caught. General Patricia Aldridge, Deputy Director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, one of the most powerful women in American military intelligence. Silver-haired, distinguished, a legend in the community. And apparently the person running the entire operation. Sarah watched as Aldridge walked to Rutherford, said something. Rutherford spat blood at her feet. Aldridge nodded to the contractor. The gun moved from Rutherford's head to his knee. The shot echoed through the mountains. Rutherford screamed. Sarah's world tilted. She'd been analyzing data, building cases, playing detective. But this was real. This was immediate. This was a man she loved being tortured while she hid in the woods. She had to do something, had to act. But she was one person with a handgun against 3 armed professionals and a general. Rushing in meant dying, meant failing. Think, analyze, find the angle. Sarah pulled out her phone, started recording video. If she couldn't save Rutherford right now, she could at least document, build evidence, make sure their crimes were witnessed. She recorded Aldridge's interrogation, recorded the second shot, this one to Rutherford's other knee, recorded his screams, his refusal to break, his absolute defiance. Recorded Aldridge's cold assessment. The old man doesn't know anything useful, just suspicions. But the girl, the analyst, she's the real problem. Sarah's blood froze. She's found too much, Aldridge continued, gotten too close. We need to eliminate her before she talks. Blackwood's handling it, making it look like a breakdown. Suicide. Happens to analysts all the time. The pressure, the guilt about her father, very tragic. They were going to kill her. Frame it as suicide. Make her another casualty of the ghost she'd been hunting. Vance spoke. What about this one? Aldridge looked at Rutherford with the cold assessment of someone evaluating livestock. Car accident. Older driver. Lost control on a mountain road. Very sad. Very believable. She nodded to the contractors. Sarah had seconds to decide. Stay hidden, stay alive, maybe escape. Or intervene, probably die but possibly save Rutherford. She thought of her father, thought of 43 names on casualty reports, thought of 30 SEALs in Syria who didn't know they were walking into an ambush, thought of the promise she'd made to herself at 14 years old, standing at her father's grave. Sarah stood, stepped from the trees, raised her weapon with shaking hands. Step away from him, she called out. 4 heads turned. 4 weapons swung toward her. Sarah kept her Glock trained on Aldridge. I've recorded everything, every word, every shot. It's already uploaded to secure servers. You kill me, you kill him, it doesn't matter. The evidence still exists. Aldridge smiled. Actually smiled. Captain Brennan, I was hoping you'd appear. Saves us the trouble of hunting you down. The Syria operation is compromised, Sarah said. Her voice was steadier than she felt. I've already sent warnings through back channels. SEAL Team 7 has been alerted. Your buyers are getting nothing. Bluffing. You can't access secure military channels without leaving traces. But Aldridge's smile had thinned. Try me. I'm the best cryptanalyst NSA has. You think I can't send anonymous warnings? Sarah was bluffing, but poker faces were just another form of encryption. The operation's already being redesigned. New routes, new timing. Everything you sold is worthless. Vance looked at Aldridge. Is that possible? Shut up, Marcus. Aldridge's eyes never left Sarah. You're smart, Captain. Your father was smart too. Got him killed. My father was a patriot. You're just a traitor with a good cover story. I'm a realist. America's defense posture requires constant threat justification. I simply ensure those threats remain credible. It's actually quite patriotic when you think about it. You've killed 43 American soldiers. I've ensured continued funding for the most powerful military in human history. A few casualties are the price of strategic dominance. Aldridge's tone was professorial, reasonable, insane. You understand mathematics, Captain. Run the numbers. My actions have justified billions in defense spending, created jobs, maintained technological superiority. The cost-benefit analysis is obvious. You're insane. I'm practical. Aldridge gestured to the contractors. Take her weapon. Bring her here. The contractors advanced. Sarah backpedaled, keeping her weapon up. I swear to God I'll shoot. No, you won't. You're an analyst, not a killer. Aldridge's voice was confident. Put the gun down, Captain. This can be painless. Sarah's finger tightened on the trigger. Could she do it? Could she actually shoot another human being? Then she saw Rutherford, bloodied, broken, looking at her with eyes that said, run. The contractors were 10 feet away, then 5. Sarah made her choice. She fired, not at the contractors, at the SUV's windshield. The glass starred. Alarms blared. The contractors dove for cover. Sarah ran. Bullets chewed through trees behind her. Sarah zigzagged, using every scrap of cover. She'd never been shot at before. The movies got it wrong. It wasn't exciting. It was terrifying. She made it to her Honda. Bullets punched through metal. Sarah threw herself into the driver's seat, started the engine, floored it. The rear window exploded. Sarah ducked, steering blind, then jerked upright to navigate the forest road. Her Honda fishtailed on loose gravel, nearly flipping. In the rearview mirror, the black SUV was giving chase. Sarah had a 10-second lead on a winding mountain road in a 10-year-old compact car being pursued by professional killers in a vehicle designed for this exact scenario. The math wasn't favorable. She pushed the Honda harder. The engine screamed. Curves came faster than thought. Sarah relied on instinct, on reflexes honed by years of analyzing patterns and making split-second calculations. The SUV gained. Professional drivers, professional equipment. Sarah's mind raced. She couldn't outrun them, couldn't outfight them, but maybe she could outthink them. She grabbed her phone, one-handed, still driving, still dodging trees that wanted to kill her, opened a specific app, started a specific protocol. The dead man's switch. Sarah had programmed it months ago, a failsafe she'd never expected to use. If activated, every piece of evidence she'd gathered, every file, every recording, every analysis, would automatically upload to multiple destinations. FBI, Pentagon Inspector General, Washington Post, New York Times, every major news organization and law enforcement agency. Her finger hovered over the activation button. If she pressed it, She'd burn every bridge, expose classified methods, probably face treason charges herself. But the truth would be out. Aldridge, Vance, Blackwood, all of them would fall. The SUV rammed her from behind. Sarah's Honda spun. She fought the wheel, barely maintained control. They rammed again, harder. Sarah looked in the mirror, saw the contractor in the passenger seat raising a rifle. She pressed the button. Nothing happened for 3 seconds. Then her phone screen flashed green. Upload initiated. Estimated time, 14 minutes. 14 minutes. She had to survive 14 minutes. The rifle fired. Sarah's rear window disintegrated. Wind howled through the cabin. She saw a side road ahead, logging trail, barely more than a path. Sarah yanked the wheel. Her Honda bounced onto the trail, suspension screaming. The SUV followed. Of course it followed. Sarah checked her phone. 12 minutes remaining. The trail narrowed. Trees pressed close. The SUV had to slow, its wider frame disadvantaged. Sarah gained 20 yards, then 30. Her phone showed the upload progress. 40% complete, 10 minutes. The trail opened into a clearing, an old logging site, abandoned equipment rusting among weeds. Sarah's Honda burst into the open. She saw her mistake immediately. Dead end. A rock face where the mountain had been carved away. No exit. Sarah slammed the brakes. The Honda skidded to a stop. The SUV entered the clearing behind her, blocked the only way out. Sarah grabbed her Glock, checked the magazine. 13 rounds. She had 13 rounds against professional killers with automatic weapons. The math was still unfavorable. She watched the upload progress. 68%, 7 minutes. The contractors exited the SUV, took positions behind cover. Professional, patient. One of them called out, "Captain Brennan, you're trapped. Make this easy." Sarah's hands shook. She was going to die here, in a West Virginia clearing, alone, terrified. But the upload continued, 73%. Her father's voice echoed in memory. "Sometimes the mission isn't about surviving, Sarah Bear. Sometimes it's just about finishing what you started." Sarah checked her weapon, chambered around. If she was going to die, she'd die buying time. 7 minutes. She could buy 7 minutes. She fired at the SUV, aiming for tires, engine block, anything to disable it. Her shots were wild, unpracticed, but she made them count through sheer determination. The contractors returned fire. Bullets tore through her Honda. Glass exploded. Metal shredded. Sarah ducked, moved, fired again. She had no training for combat, but she had mathematics, angles, probability. She calculated firing lanes, predicted movements, used every scrap of analysis to survive 30 seconds longer. 5 minutes remaining. Her magazine ran dry. Sarah reloaded with trembling fingers, dropped the magazine twice before seating it properly. The contractors advanced. They knew she was outmatched, were taking their time, making it clean. 4 minutes. Sarah fired until her second magazine was empty, reloaded her last one. 3 minutes. A bullet caught her shoulder. The world exploded in pain. Sarah fell behind her Honda, gasping. Blood soaked her shirt. Her right arm went numb. She switched the Glock to her left hand, tried to aim. The weapon wavered. 2 minutes. The contractors were 20 feet away. Sarah could see their faces. Young men, someone's sons, doing their job, following orders, killing her. 1 minute. Sarah closed her eyes, thought of her father, of Rutherford, of 30 SEALs in Syria who might live because of what she'd done. She thought it was enough. Then she heard it. Sirens. Sarah's eyes opened. The contractors heard it too. Distant but approaching fast. Multiple vehicles. Her phone buzzed. Upload complete. Auto notification sent. And then, because Sarah had programmed very good fail-safes, a second notification. Her evidence package had triggered automated FBI alerts. The Virginia State Police, Homeland Security, every agency with jurisdiction was converging on these coordinates. The contractors looked at each other, looked at Sarah, made a calculation. They ran. Sarah watched them disappear into the forest, listened to the sirens grow louder, looked at her phone screen, now showing confirmation that her evidence had reached 17 different agencies and news organizations. She'd done it. Against every odd, against every rational prediction, she'd won. Sarah slumped against her destroyed Honda. Blood loss made the world fuzzy. She was dimly aware of vehicles arriving, shouts, people running toward her. Someone was calling her name, asking questions, trying to stop the bleeding. Sarah's last conscious thought was simple. Dad, I finished it. Then darkness took her, gentle as a father's embrace. Sarah woke to the antiseptic smell of hospitals and the rhythmic beep of monitors tracking a heartbeat she was surprised to still possess. Her shoulder burned with the particular agony of reconstructed tissue and surgical steel. She tried to move and immediately regretted the decision. Easy, Captain. The voice was unfamiliar. Female, authoritative. You've been out for 36 hours. The surgery was complicated. Sarah's vision focused slowly. The woman standing beside her bed was mid-50s, wearing a dark suit that screamed federal agent. FBI, Sarah guessed, or maybe DOD, Criminal Investigation Command, someone with acronyms and authority. Where am I? Sarah's voice came out as gravel. Walter Reed Medical Center, Secure Wing, you're under protective custody. The woman pulled up a chair, sat with the controlled posture of someone who'd spent a career delivering bad news. I'm Special Agent Karen Reeves, FBI Counterintelligence. We need to talk about what you've done. Sarah's heart rate spiked. The monitors betrayed her anxiety. Relax. You're not in trouble. Well, you're in several different kinds of trouble, but not the kind that ends with handcuffs. Reeves pulled out a tablet. Your evidence dump created the biggest shitstorm the intelligence community has seen in 40 years. Every agency from NSA to DOD to Treasury is scrambling. The Washington Post published their first story 6 hours ago. The New York Times followed 4 hours later. CNN is running it every 20 minutes. Rutherford, Sarah managed. Colonel James Rutherford, is he alive? Barely. He's 3 floors up in intensive care. Bilateral knee reconstruction, severe blood loss, fractured ribs. But he's tough as old leather. Doctors say he'll make it. Reeves leaned forward. He's also the only reason you're not facing espionage charges. He contacted my office 4 days ago. Explained what you were investigating. I authorized a provisional operation, very unofficial, very illegal, but now very vindicated. Sarah absorbed that. Rutherford had been working official channels all along, had backup plans for the backup plans. Classic operator thinking. The contractors who shot you are in custody, Reeves continued. They rolled on their employers within 2 hours. Nightfall Solutions headquarters was raided this morning. We frozen 47 bank accounts, arrested 23 executives and consultants. Marcus Vance was picked up at Dulles Airport trying to board a flight to Sao Paulo. David Corman's in custody. Half a dozen other NSA and DOD personnel are being questioned. And Blackwood? Sarah asked. Major Eric Blackwood? Reeves's expression darkened. Dead. Apparent suicide. Single gunshot wound to the head in his Fort Meade office. Happened about 3 hours after your evidence went public. Sarah felt nothing. Not satisfaction, not grief. Just a cold emptiness where justice should have lived. We don't think it was suicide, Reeves added. Forensics is treating it as a murder scene. Someone wanted him silenced before he could talk. Which brings us to General Patricia Aldridge. Where is she? That's the complicated part. Reeves stood, walked to the window. Outside, Washington, D.C. sprawled in afternoon sunlight. oblivious to the war being fought in its shadows. General Aldridge is currently in a DIA facility undergoing interrogation. She's not talking. Lawyered up immediately. High-powered defense team claiming she was conducting an authorized counterintelligence operation. That Nightfall Solutions was actually an FBI front company. That everything was sanctioned at the highest levels. That's bullshit. We know, but she's got 40 years of distinguished service, medals, connections that reach into Congress and the Pentagon. Taking her down isn't like arresting some contractor. This is a sitting deputy director of the Defense Intelligence Agency. The political implications are nuclear. Sarah struggled to sit up, ignoring the pain that lanced through her shoulder. I have recordings, her voice, explicitly discussing selling intelligence, ordering murders. That's not counterintelligence. That's treason. I know, and those recordings are central to the case being built against her. But Captain, you need to understand what you've unleashed. Reeves turned from the window, face grave. Aldridge didn't work alone. She had enablers, supporters, people who benefited from her operations. Some of them are very powerful. Some of them are terrified that she'll name names to reduce her sentence. Good. Let them be terrified. It's more complicated than that. There are people who want this whole thing to go away, who want to classify your evidence, bury it under national security concerns, make a quiet deal with Aldridge, keep the scandal contained. Sarah's fists clenched despite the IV lines. My father died because of her. 42 other soldiers. She was selling American lives for profit. There's no deal. There's no containment. There's only justice. I agree, but you're not running this investigation. The intelligence community is eating itself trying to figure out damage control. Your methods, hacking Nightfall's servers, infiltrating classified networks, going rogue, those create legal problems. Defense attorneys will argue, fruit of the poisonous tree, that every piece of evidence you gathered is inadmissible because you obtained it illegally. So she walks? No, she doesn't walk. But the case against her needs to be built carefully, properly, using your evidence as a roadmap, but obtaining everything through legal channels. Warrants, subpoenas, official investigations. Reeves sat back down. Which is why I need you to walk me through everything. Every piece of evidence, every source, every method. Help me build a case that survives defense attorneys and political pressure. Sarah spent the next 4 hours doing exactly that. Despite exhaustion and pain, despite medications that made her thoughts fuzzy, she recounted every detail. The ghost signal, the cryptographic analysis, the infiltration of Nightfall's network, the financial records, the communications logs, the dead drop interception. Reeves recorded everything, took notes, asked sharp questions that told Sarah the agent understood both the technical details and the broader implications. When Sarah finally finished, Reeves sat back with the expression of someone who'd just been handed a murder weapon with perfect fingerprints. This is enough, she said quietly. More than enough. General Patricia Aldridge is going to spend the rest of her life in federal prison. I'll make sure of it. What about the Syria operation? Sarah asked. SEAL Team 7, did they? The operation was postponed the moment your evidence hit FBI servers. New tactical plan, new routes, new communications protocols. Executed 48 hours ago with complete success. 0 casualties. The intelligence that Nightfall was planning to sell became worthless. Reeves smiled slightly. You saved 30 lives, Captain. Maybe more. For the first time since waking, Sarah felt something break loose in her chest. Not quite relief, not quite peace, but something adjacent to both. There's one more thing, Reeves said. We recovered something from the Appalachian facility. Colonel Rutherford had a recording device in his jacket. Got everything Aldridge said during his interrogation. Her voice, her admissions, her ordering his execution. It corroborates your evidence perfectly. Can I see him, Rutherford? Not yet. He's still critical. But soon. Reeves stood to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, Captain, what you did was incredibly brave, incredibly stupid, and absolutely necessary. The intelligence community needed this reckoning, needed someone willing to burn it all down to expose the rot. I just wanted justice for my father. You got it, and for 42 others, and for every soldier who'll deploy in the future without wondering if someone's selling their position to the enemy. Reeves headed for the door. Get some rest. You've got a long road ahead. Testimony, debriefings, probably a medal you'll never be allowed to acknowledge publicly. Sarah lay back, exhausted. Through her window, she could see the Washington Monument in the distance. All those memorials to sacrifice and service. All those names carved in stone. Soon, one more name would be added to the roll of justice served. Not carved in marble, but written in courtroom transcripts and sealed files, and the silent knowledge that traitors could be caught, even 15 years later. Her father's ghost could finally rest. The next 72 hours blurred together. Doctors, debriefings, physical therapy that felt like medieval torture. Sarah learned to use her right arm again, millimeter by painful millimeter. Learned that bullets caused damage that echoed long after the wound closed. FBI agents came and went. So did DOD investigators, NSA security. Everyone wanted their piece of the story. Everyone needed their reports filed. On the fourth day, they finally let her see Rutherford. He looked terrible. 20 pounds lighter than she remembered, skin gray as cigarette ash. Both legs immobilized in complex braces that looked like medieval torture devices. But his eyes were clear when Sarah wheeled herself into his room. They tried to kill you proper this time, he said, eyeing the bandages and monitors. Sarah managed a weak smile. Takes more than a couple contractors to stop a Brennan. Your father used to say the same thing. His voice softened. Stubborn runs in the family. She wheeled closer to his bed. You took the real risk, walking into that facility, letting them capture you. Had to draw them out, had to get them talking on record. Rutherford tapped the bandages on his ribs. My body camera got everything. Aldridge's admissions, Vance's involvement, the whole conspiracy, worth a couple bullets. You almost died. Been almost dying since 1982. Gets easier with practice. But his attempt at humor couldn't hide the pain in his eyes. Sarah, I need to tell you something. About your father. About that last conversation we had. Sarah's breath caught. Okay. Michael knew, not everything, but enough. He'd found irregularities in the communication systems, had started asking questions. The night before Operation Midnight Sun, he called me. Said he thought someone was selling intelligence. Said he was going to postpone the mission, run a full security audit. Why didn't he? Orders came down from higher up. Mission was time critical. Taliban leadership supposedly in the area. Michael was told to execute or face relief of command. Rutherford's voice was rough. He went anyway. Knew it felt wrong. Went anyway because that's what soldiers do. Follow orders. Trust the system. And the system killed him. Yeah, it did. Rutherford looked away. I should have supported him harder. Should have backed his instincts. Instead, I told him to trust command, that his concerns were just pre-mission jitters. I sent him to his death, Sarah. Sent 6 other men with him. That's not on you. Isn't it? I was his commanding officer, his friend. I should have listened. Rutherford's hands trembled. I've carried that guilt for 15 years. Every day, every night, wondering if I just backed him up, if I'd raised hell about his concerns, maybe he'd still be alive. Sarah reached out, took his scarred hand in hers. You didn't know, couldn't have known, and you've spent 15 years trying to make it right. That counts for something. Does it? It does to me, Sarah squeezed his hand. You kept your promise. You watched over me, taught me, helped me finish what Dad started. That's worth more than guilt. Rutherford was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was thick. I see so much of him in you. That same fire, that refusal to accept injustice. But you did what he couldn't. You survived long enough to finish the fight. They sat together in silence, two survivors of a war that had started before Sarah was old enough to understand what war meant. Outside, Washington continued its eternal dance of power and politics. Inside, two people who'd lost too much finally found something like peace. Agent Reeves visited that afternoon with news. Aldridge's defense is crumbling. Her lawyers are trying to negotiate a plea deal, reduce charges in exchange for naming everyone involved. Is that acceptable? Sarah asked. Hell no, but it might be necessary. The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought. We've identified 17 officers and civilians in various agencies who took payments from Nightfall. Some are small fish, clerks who passed information for a few $1,000s. Others are senior officials. This could destroy entire departments if it goes fully public. Let it. Burn it all down if that's what justice requires. Reeves smiled grimly. I knew I liked you. But practically speaking, we need Aldridge's testimony to build cases against the others. Some of them have covered their tracks too well. Without her cooperation, they walk. What's she offering? Full disclosure on every operation, every person involved, every payment made. In exchange, she wants charges reduced from treason to conspiracy. 25 years instead of life without parole. Sarah felt rage bubble up. She murdered American soldiers, tortured Rutherford, tried to kill me, and she gets 25 years? I don't like it either, but 25 years means she dies in prison. She's 61. With her health issues, she won't survive a decade, and her testimony puts another 16 people behind bars, maybe more. Reeves leaned forward. Sometimes justice is about mathematics, about maximizing the total accountability, even if individual punishment feels inadequate. Sarah understood the logic, hated it, but understood it. There's something else, Reeves continued. We need you to testify, grand jury, possibly trial. Your technical analysis, your evidence gathering, you're the foundation of this entire case. When? Preliminary hearings start in 6 weeks. You'll need to be ready. Need to walk prosecutors through every technical detail of how you found the evidence. I'll be ready. There's a complication. NSA wants to charge you with unauthorized access to classified systems, theft of government property, violation of security protocols. They're building a case. Sarah's stomach dropped. They're going to prosecute me? They're threatening to, using it as leverage. If you testify against Aldridge, they'll push for maximum charges. Could be 20 years in federal prison. So I have a choice. Justice for my father or freedom for myself. No, you have a choice between doing this alone or accepting help. Reeves pulled out a document. DoD General Counsel has drafted an immunity agreement. Full protection from prosecution in exchange for your cooperation and testimony. You'd have to resign from NSA, accept general discharge under honorable conditions, lose all security clearances. But you'd be free. Sarah read the document. It was exactly as Reeves described. Her career, her reputation, everything she'd built, gone in exchange for the truth being told. I need time to think. You have 48 hours, then the offer expires. Sarah spent those 48 hours in agonizing contemplation. Rutherford advised her to take the deal. You've already sacrificed enough. Michael wouldn't want you in prison. But Sarah kept thinking about those 43 names on casualty reports, about 30 SEALs who'd lived because she'd acted, about future soldiers who deserved to know their command structure wouldn't sell them out. In the end, the choice was obvious. She signed the immunity agreement. The preliminary hearings began on a cold November morning. Sarah testified for 6 hours, walking prosecutors through her investigation with technical precision. She described the ghost signal, the cryptographic analysis, the infiltration of Nightfall's network, demonstrated how she'd cracked their encryption, traced the financial records, documented 15 years of treason. Defense attorneys attacked her methods, questioned her credentials, suggested she'd fabricated evidence out of grief and obsession. Sarah remained calm. Let the mathematics speak. Let the evidence stand on its own foundation of irrefutable proof. By the end of her testimony, even the defense attorneys looked defeated. The grand jury returned indictments against Patricia Aldridge on 47 counts, including treason, conspiracy to commit murder, espionage, and obstruction of justice. Against Marcus Vance on 32 counts. Against the Nightfall executives on hundreds of combined charges. The trials would take years. Appeals would stretch into decades. But justice, slow as continental drift, had finally begun moving. 3 weeks later, Sarah received orders to report to the Pentagon. She went in civilian clothes, her military career already over. A Marine escort led her through corridors of power she'd only seen in photographs. They stopped at a nondescript conference room. Inside waited a collection of stars and eagles that represented more combined authority than Sarah had ever been in proximity to before. A 4-star general stood. "Captain Brennan, thank you for coming." "Sir." Sarah's instinct was to salute, but civilians didn't salute. She stood at attention instead. "At ease, please, sit." The general waited until she complied. "You've created quite a situation for us, Captain. Your investigation exposed systemic failures in our intelligence apparatus, corruption at the highest levels, a betrayal of trust that will take years to repair." Sarah said nothing. Let them say their piece. "However," the general continued, "you also prevented a catastrophic intelligence failure, saved American lives, demonstrated analytical capabilities and moral courage that reflect the highest traditions of military service." He pulled out a folder. "Your discharge has been classified as general under honorable conditions, not dishonorable. Your service record will reflect exemplary performance up until unauthorized actions taken during a legitimate counterintelligence investigation. You'll retain partial benefits, and there's something else." The general opened the folder. Inside was a medal Sarah had never seen except in classified briefings. The Intelligence Star, awarded for voluntary acts of courage performed under hazardous conditions in the field of intelligence. "This ceremony is classified," the general said. "No public record, no official citation, but we wanted you to know that your service, all of it, including the parts that broke rules, has been recognized at the highest levels." They pinned the medal on her civilian jacket, shook her hand, made promises about how the intelligence community would reform, would improve, would never again allow such systematic corruption. Sarah believed approximately none of it. Bureaucracies didn't change because they wanted to. They changed because people forced them to. She'd forced one change. Others would have to force the rest. But she accepted the medal, wore it for the 30 minutes of the ceremony, then returned it to its classified storage, where it would live in vaults alongside 1,000 other secrets. She left the Pentagon feeling lighter somehow. The weight she'd carried for 15 years, the questions, the guilt, the unfinished war, had finally been set down. December brought snow to Washington and news that Aldridge's plea deal had been accepted. 25 years. Sarah attended the sentencing, sitting in the back of the courtroom where she could watch justice rendered in the cold language of law. Aldridge stood before the judge, silver-haired and ramrod straight. Even in defeat, she projected authority. The prosecutor read the charges. The defense made their allocution. The judge pronounced sentence. 25 years, federal supermax prison, no possibility of parole. Aldridge's face never changed, never showed regret or remorse. Even being led away in handcuffs, she walked like a general reviewing troops. Sarah felt no satisfaction, just completion. A chapter closed, a book finished. Outside the courthouse, reporters mobbed her. Sarah had become infamous in intelligence circles. Her story leaked despite classification attempts. She pushed through them without comment. She'd said everything that mattered in her testimony. Rutherford waited in a car at the curb. He'd recovered enough to leave Walter Reed, though he walked with a cane now, and probably always would. He drove them to Arlington National Cemetery without discussion. They walked together to Section 60, to a headstone Sarah had visited hundreds of times over 15 years. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Brennan, husband, father, patriot. Sarah knelt on the frozen ground, placed her hand on the marble that had absorbed so many of her tears. "It's done, Dad," she said quietly. "Aldridge is in prison. Nightfall is destroyed. The conspiracy is exposed. Everyone who sold you out, who killed you and the others, they're all facing justice." She paused. "I hope that's enough. I hope wherever you are, you can finally rest." Rutherford stood behind her, silent support. After a moment, he spoke. "He's proud of you, Sarah. I know it. Wherever soldiers' souls go, he's there telling everyone about his daughter, who refused to let the truth stay buried." Sarah stood, wiped her eyes. "What do I do now? My career is over. My security clearance revoked. I'm 29 years old with no job, no prospects, and a skill set that's useless outside intelligence work." "You teach," Rutherford said. "Universities would kill for someone with your expertise, someone who can teach the next generation of cryptanalysts not just the technical skills, but the moral foundation. The understanding that classified doesn't mean above the law. You think I'd be good at that? I think you'd be exactly what the profession needs." Rutherford put a hand on her shoulder. "Michael taught you to finish what you start. Now start something new. Something that makes sure his death, all their deaths, meant something beyond just punishing the guilty." Sarah looked at the headstone one more time, thought about 43 names, thought about the 30 SEALs in Syria who'd come home to their families, thought about future soldiers who'd deploy with slightly more confidence that their command structure wasn't betraying them. Maybe that was legacy enough. She and Rutherford walked back through Arlington's endless rows. Winter's sun broke through clouds, casting long shadows across white marble. Somewhere, a bugler practiced taps, the eternal sound of military farewell. At the cemetery gates they parted, Rutherford to his home in Alexandria, Sarah to her uncertain future. But before they separated, he pulled her into a careful embrace. "Your father asked me to watch over you. I did my best. But you don't need watching anymore. You're stronger than both of us ever were. I learned from the best. You exceeded your teachers. That's all a mentor can hope for." Rutherford released her. "Stay in touch. Let me know where you land. And Sarah, thank you for finishing what Michael started, for giving an old soldier the chance to make things right." We made them right together. Sarah drove back to her apartment through Washington traffic. Her phone buzzed with messages, job offers from private security firms who'd heard about her skills, requests for interviews from journalists, invitations to speak at conferences. One message caught her attention: Johns Hopkins University, Department of Applied Mathematics and Computer Science. They were looking for an adjunct professor to teach cryptography and cybersecurity. The position came with an interesting note: "We need someone who understands that ethics matter more than encryption strength." Sarah smiled, typed a response expressing interest. That night, she sat in her apartment surrounded by boxes. She was moving, couldn't stay in a place that had been searched by killers, needed a fresh start. While packing, she found her father's old letters, the ones he'd sent from various deployments, the ones her mother had saved. Sarah had read them hundreds of times, but tonight she opened them again. One letter in particular, dated September 20th, 2010, 3 days before Operation Midnight Sun. "Sarah Bear," it began, her father's handwriting, bold and clear. "I'm writing this because something feels wrong with the upcoming mission. Can't explain it, just instinct. But I've learned to trust instinct. If you're reading this and I didn't make it home, remember, truth matters more than comfort. Justice matters more than convenience. The world needs people willing to stand in the gap and say, 'This is wrong,' even when everyone else stays silent. Whatever path you choose, don't accept easy answers to hard questions. Don't let people in authority tell you to look away from wrongdoing. Don't let fear or career advancement stop you from doing what's right. If I don't come back, finish what I started. Ask the questions I couldn't. Find the truth I was looking for. I love you more than mathematics can measure. Be brave. Be relentless. Your loving father, Michael. Sarah read the letter 3 times, felt tears streaming down her face. Her father had known, had suspected, had left her instructions disguised as a goodbye note. She'd followed those instructions, had asked the questions, had found the truth, had finished what he started. And now, finally, she could begin writing her own story. Sarah packed the letters carefully. Tomorrow she'd start fresh, would teach students about cryptography and ethics, would work to ensure the next generation understood that protecting secrets meant more than just technical skill. It meant moral courage. She went to bed early. For the first time in 15 years, she didn't dream of ghost signals or encrypted messages. Didn't dream of her father's death or unanswered questions. She dreamed instead of a classroom, students learning, questions being asked, truth being valued above convenience. She dreamed of a future where soldiers deployed, knowing their command structure valued their lives more than profit. She dreamed of legacy beyond vengeance. When Sarah woke the next morning, sunlight streamed through her window. December cold made patterns on the glass. She dressed slowly, shoulders still aching, made coffee, opened her laptop, started drafting her acceptance letter to Johns Hopkins. Somewhere in Federal Supermax, Patricia Aldridge began the first day of her 25-year sentence. Somewhere in hospitals and rehabilitation centers, wounded soldiers recovered from injuries sustained in operations that hadn't been betrayed. Somewhere in Syria, 30 SEALs were home with their families, never knowing how close they'd come to ambush. And in a small apartment in Silver Spring, Maryland, Sarah Brennan, former NSA cryptanalyst, defender of truth, her father's daughter, began the next chapter of a life that had been shaped by ghosts, but would be defined by her own choices. The ghost frequency had finally gone silent, but its echo would resonate through the intelligence community for decades. A reminder that secrets could be kept, but not at the cost of honor. That classified operations required oversight, not blind trust. That even the most powerful could be held accountable. Sarah typed her acceptance letter, hit send, closed her laptop. Through her window, she could see Arlington Cemetery in the distance. Endless rows of white stone marking sacrifice and service. Her father's grave somewhere among them. She raised her coffee cup in silent salute. "Mission complete, Dad," she whispered. "Now watch me build something new." Outside her window, dawn broke over Arlington. Endless white stones catching the first light. Among them, her father's grave. No longer a wound, but a promise kept. Sarah turned back to her laptop. The next chapter was waiting.